Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. A little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.
Boy, just like that, we're back and we're set for UFC Fight Night Vegas 72. Song Yadong taking on Ricky Simón in the main event today. Really want to thank everybody for joining in here on the YouTubes. You toss a like, you hit up the super chat. You guys support the show and you drive the darn bus. And when we have a look at the card that's coming up this weekend, Matt, fights shuffled.
They certainly have been.
Weights missed. I know we had a fighter that kind of rumored maybe a move down to 115 pounds. Can't even make bantamweight, let alone flyweight. But Matt, when we do look at this card overall, 11 fights total, 2 ranked fighters in the main event. Song Yadong take on Ricky Simón. Arguably one of the weakest fight night cards we've had in a very long time. It's not
a great card top to bottom, but I will say this. The main event is a fight that we've both been excited about for weeks now. I gotta be honest, there's some times where I won't know every single fight on the card until I start really doing the research for it. You know, it's hard to know what fights are coming 2-3 weeks down the road, but I've been excited for Simón versus Yadong for a very long time now because these are two athletes who are still really trying to prove themselves at 135 pounds. They are both kind of those top dogs, but only one can really become a true contender afterwards. And like you showed, we have the thumbnail ready for next weekend's pay-per-view, right? That's going to be headlined by, of course, Cejudo and Aljamain Sterling, the champion at this division. So this fight itself could have major implications for the whole entire division.
It definitely could. 8 versus 10. We already had top-ranked bantamweights in main event slots earlier on this year. Corey Sandhagen was able to get a big win.
Isn't it nice how active that division always seems to be? That's the one thing 135 seems to have going for it. Yes, 145, 155, they all have that talent depth in their rankings, but 135, it does feel like every other or every single weekend out, we seem to have ranked fighters competing against each other.
Austin Lefebvre, come on, boys. We got bangers. Austin, you're buying what the UFC's selling you with cards like this. I mean, they're really throwing out some bottom-of-the-barrel stuff. You've got some debuting fighters. You got some fighters that miss weight. It is a poor fight card, guys. I mean, I'm not going to pull any punches. But
I think there's some fun fights, though, and I'm going to get excited for those.
Yeah, we will get excited. We'll throw it on over to our Fight of the Night screen. We're working off of 2 computers because one decided that it didn't want to work all that great today. Song Yadong, Ricky Simón as a possible Fight of the Night. We've already kind of covered that one. But a fight that got its due as the week went on. This one got moved from the main card, from the prelims to the main card. Julian Erosa taking on a debuting Fernando Padilla. Erosa's last time out, do a top 15 fighter in Caceres. They bump Caceres from the rankings. Caceres gets the win. And now all of a sudden for Julian Erosa, 6-6 in the UFC in 3 stints, he gets to welcome in Padilla. So it's a big downgrade in competition. But for Padilla, a great opportunity coming in here. The former Fury FC man coming off a pretty long layoff.
And that's the one thing about this fight. Fighters making their debut in the UFC don't normally fight Julian Erosa. He does have that experience. He's been there. He's done that. And he's fought a very high level of competition throughout his career. That's the really important thing about Erosa. You might look at his record and be like, oh, it's not pristine. But that's the thing. When you fight really good fighters, your record's not going to be undefeated. And that's what I like about this matchup between Erosa and Padilla. It's going to test Fernando, and that's what should be the most fun.
Well, there's a lot of folks hitting up that chat already. Prince Vegeta's son. We got FaZe. We got Lord Nikon first, last as well.
What's up, everybody?
Definitely, some fights to look forward to, but again, the level at which they are at, not really the best. Again, I'm going to be playing around with the one computer screen here as we move through the card, so some technical troubles on our end, just not being able to have our main screen up, but really appreciate you guys joining in nonetheless. We'll go all the way from the bottom of the card back up through the top. We differed on some of these picks throughout the week.
A number of them.
And we start off, Matt, with Hailey Cowan taking on Jamey-Lyn Horth. And Hailey Cowan, her third weigh-in, her first fight this year. She missed weight at 137.5, and I won't put that graphic up there because I do have some sympathy on this one in the fact that Hailey Cowan, the first time out, she had that cyst that ruptured. Then her second time out, Tamiris Vidal wasn't able to make the walk right ahead of the weigh-ins, and now this time she's taking on Jamey-Lyn Horth. And I want to hear from the fans out there kind of who they have in this fight, because for Horth, there's been long periods of inactivity throughout her career. It's been much more condensed schedule for Cowan. Cowan's level of competition not near that of Horth so far. But when you do have a look at this one, I mean, it is an interesting fight, and it really is a clash of styles between these two.
This is why I have Horth in the matchup, because I do feel like we did a pretty good job breaking this down. I think all the rounds are going to be fairly close by the time they're over, and I don't see a finish in this fight. So if that's being said, I do think Horth throws the heavier shots. I'm not saying she's the better striker, but she puts a lot behind some of these strikes when she does throw them. And I just think this is a fight where if the rounds are close and Horth is landing 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 of those bigger shots, I think the judges might just end up going with her with a lot of these rounds. And for that reason, that's why I do have Horth.
Well, I mean, Horth tends to throw a lot more volume from the outside, employs a good kick, has a lot of good, really straight shots. For Cowan, it's hooks to close the distance, backs off to her left every single time, and I'm going to touch on that when Joseph Holmes is going to be taking on Claudio Ribeiro next week, because he does the exact same thing. So if you look at it for Cowan, she likes to close the distance, go for the takedown, but her takedown accuracy isn't all that great, and she tends to hold position quite a bit. And I think in this fight, being the bigger fighter, the more experienced at bantamweight, because this is Horth's first fight at bantamweight, I think Cowan possesses some of those physical gifts that are going to give her the advantage in the fight. And I see it over there on the comment section. Star Smith 77 Porter tuning in a little bit late. I'm Wayne Kerr saying there's some good fights in this one. A branch above going with Canada. If we have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes, they're really close. It says 54% to 46, now 51% for Hailey Cowan. So 51% going with Cowan, 49% going with Jamey-Lyn Horth. Pablo, what's your take on Sage Northcutt's return? All love. We were supposed to have Sage Northcutt in an interview on the channel a long time ago. We ended up getting Colby Northcutt from one JHK MMA, and it was rumored that he was going to come back a couple of years ago. He got COVID. He couldn't make the return. Now he's finally coming back. I think it's a long time coming, and they're not matching him up with somebody that's like 3 weight classes bigger and also a giant knockout artist. So I'm happy to see Sage Northcutt back.
I don't really have that big of an opinion on him after he left the UFC, if you like, honestly. Like, he wasn't that great. Hopefully he can find some success in his career. I just felt like he was pushed far too heavily too early. And we see what happens. It happened to Chase Hooper. Like, this is a really difficult sport to get into when you're really young. You do need a lot of experience to really be able to make it to the top. So hopefully, like you said, Sage is able to kind of fight guys who are more at his level.
Clay saying the rudest thing I've ever seen Clay say in the comments section. And we also have a Go Phillies from Tyler. So we're split on the pick here. I'm going to go with Cowan, but not with a ton of certainty because, the tape study leaves some to be desired. Matt, next fight, originally supposed to be Brian Kelleher taking on Journey Newson. Kelleher out due to injury on Wednesday night, and in slides a replacement, Marcus McGhee. And when you look at this one, kind of numbers on a page, I've seen McGhee show decent sprawl ability with some of his takedown defense. I've seen him show poor takedown defense. And again, I said this during the video that we had come out on Thursday. McGee's one of those guys that's going to get lumped in with his contemporaries, the guy that he trains with. And I know Mario Bautista now booked in with Cody Garbrandt. You've got Kyler Phillips there, who's also cornered McGhee in the past.
What a wild fight for Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah, it really is. He's going to lose that one. And then you also have Sean O'Malley out of that gym, but McGee's not like those guys, because where those guys bring in all of their abilities to the fight game, and I know McGee's a few months shy of his 33rd birthday making the UFC debut, the guy brawls, and he doesn't take his foot off the pedal from the first minute to the last minute of the fight or anywhere in between. So when you do look at it with a fight like this, Matt, for me, in making that pick the other night with a guy like Marcus McGhee, the level competition's not good. And the only good guy that he's fought, he's lost to, who ended up fighting for that LFA bantamweight title.
You said he was going to finish Journey Newson.
Yeah, because he actually does stuff. Journey Newson pausing the outside of this Taekwondo. The one time that we saw him get really, really heady and active was in a fight where both guys went for a crack and he landed back against the guy in Domingo Pilarte. But other than that, his wrestling can be somewhat non-existent. His top pressure isn't the greatest. He has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He trains out of a good gym in the Pacific Northwest. But Journey Newson's got to bring the fight to McGhee. I know McGhee's going to bring the fight to a guy like
See,
Newson.
that's why he doesn't have to bring the fight to him. If you have a willing dance partner, why would you match his fire with your fire if that's his best chance to win? It's going to open up a lot of Newson's wrestling, or at least I believe it will, just because McGhee is so aggressive. I agree with everything you said. I just think the fact that McGhee is going to be the one moving forward is going to make it a lot harder for him to decipher what is a punch and what is a takedown attempt. And I brought it up a lot at, I guess not the start of the week, it was only a couple of days ago now, but when we originally did this breakdown video, I don't love the top pressure from Newson at all. For a guy who does have his wrestling and jiu-jitsu, you would assume he could be a much more controlling and a heavier fighter in that top position. So that's an improvement I would like to see him make. Now, of course, he's not a spring chicken in his career at this stage, but if he can use the wrestling and be heavy on top, I do think those two things are going to be enough. I agree with everything you said about McGhee and his aggressiveness. I just think the aggressiveness from McGhee is going to get him taken down.
That's the weird thing that I didn't understand when I edited the video and put it together, because you said, I don't expect Journey Newson to go out there and get takedowns. Then at the very end, you said, I expect him to get on top and use his jiu-jitsu.
I don't think he's going to go out there and pursue a lot of takedowns, but if McGhee's the one moving forward, brawling with him like we have seen in the majority of his fights, I do think that's going to open it up for him. We've seen that a lot. When a fighter's dealing with pressure and it's hard for them to move on the cage, they do shoot for a lot of takedowns, especially if it is a part of Journey Newson's game, which it is. I do think the grappling is going to be at the forefront of it.
Well, and for me, I think it's going to get really interesting. Phoenix is asking you for that like out there, and I mean, we got 200 hanging out on a Saturday evening for a less than stellar card. It's just, yeah, for me, when I do look at it, I like the leg kicks from the orthodox stance out of a guy like McGhee, pardon me, and out of McGhee when he's throwing from southpaw, he's really throwing those big, long, looping hooks to try and get those finishes. So, again, I do see it out there, like Bartholomew of Haywood, UFC signing way too many fighters to fill these fight night cards. Yeah, and they're not paying them a lot of money, and they're just kind of adding to
They've been doing
the
this
damage.
for years, guys.
So, not really hyped, but yeah, we're split on the pick on this one. Then we move into a fight, and now, yeah, I will pull it out. I mean, Detective Crashmore comes out because for Irina Alekseeva, her last fight was about a year and a half ago over with Bellator. She goes to try and make the weight. It's a 125-pound fight. She comes in at 129.9. She comes in for this fight at 135, weighs 140 pounds, rumored to want to go down to strawweight. I don't know what that's about. Scott B, it's been a minute.
How are you, Scott B?
What's up, gentlemen? Appreciate that, Scott B. Thank you for tuning in. When I look at this fight, Matt, I mean, Alekseeva has a judo black belt.
Exactly.
Alekseeva throws, again, kind of like a Marcus McGhee, those wild looping hooks to try and close her distance. She'll throw a bit of a naked leg kick. She goes in for a lot of clinch work. She has jiu-jitsu in her back pocket, but it's not the greatest. Whereas the big difference maker here is Stephanie Egger. Obviously, you know, one of those fighters that usually enjoys a size advantage at bantamweight. We'll see how that plays out tonight. But when you have a look at this one, and I see a Business Jeremy UFC NFTs, first time popping in live, watch all the recorded shows, though.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. When I look at a fight like this, Matt, obviously the ADCC credentials kind of are the big talking point for somebody like Stephanie Egger. She, too, a judo black belt. But when you look at a fighter like Stephanie Egger, again, we saw her in the UFC. Some wins that have been really nice. A performance bonus against Jessica Rose Clark. She tends to, you know, struggle in some aspects of the striking, but when she has that size advantage against other judo players, I look at somebody like Eileen Perez that likes those upper body throws too. Well, she was all over that fight. Shanna Young outstruck her on the outside, but when it came to the grappling, the takedowns, Egger took over. I don't love the odds on somebody like Stephanie Egger. She's a massive favorite in this fight. Even with the Alekseeva weight miss, that scared me at the start of the week, the weight before, and now the weight now. But when I look at a fight like this, could Alekseeva go out there and outstrike Stephanie Egger for 15 minutes? I think she could for 10. I know she's not really a great third round
It's not going to be
striker.
a great fight to watch if we're just getting 15 minutes of these two striking back and forth. Let me say that right away. This fight to me for Stephanie Egger, though, you know the Boston Aquarium? We've been there before. It's a pretty cool spot.
Before, yeah.
You know how they have people on the inside of the tank kind of cleaning it, right? 99% of the time, I'm assuming their job is fine, right? There's no issues. They're just cleaning the glass. Everything's cool. They're feeding the fish. Probably 1% of the time, though, a Shark's going to get, like, uncomfortably close to them. That's what this fight for Stephanie Egger is to me. She's going to have to use her grappling, and she is going to have to kind of jump into that tank, which is where Alekseeva can have a lot of success, because if you are grappling with her, it's going to leave the door open for her to get sweeps, just be an active grappler off the bottom and make Stephanie Egger work. And if that's the case, it is going to be a much more 50-50 fight, I think, than some people would assume, because I do think a lot of people are going into this fight thinking, wow, Egger is going to have a huge grappling advantage. And while she can, I'm not denying that at all, I do think that we could see some more 50-50 exchanges between these two on the mat. So oddly enough, I just think top pressure is going to be the most important thing for both these fighters. I think we are going to get a lot of kind of squirminess from the bottom, going for a lot of submission attempts. So whoever can really hold that top position, the most dominant out of these two, I think does have the best chance to win. But you're right, for where the odds are on Eggers, I don't necessarily love them, even though I do believe she's the more skilled mixed martial artist between the two.
I think she's better in certain disciplines. I think, again, Alekseeva being the better striker.
But mixed martial arts, not just the one thing.
We went down through her accolades. She hasn't fought anybody near the level of somebody like a Stephanie Egger. I mean, what is it? 3-time Russian judo silver medalist. She's a Russian European gold medalist in combat sambo. She's also a 4-time Russian hand-to-hand combat champ and a 2-time hand-to-hand combat champ in Europe as well. But when you look at a fight like this, again, it really is combining everything. We'll see if somebody like Alekseeva, with another really long layoff, is able to go out there and get a win. 77% of the fans at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram have somebody in Stephanie Egger to get the win in the matchup. And when I do look at this one overall, for Alekseeva, I mean, she was able to rock and drop her second to last opponent that she ended up losing to, and she got into some really tricky submission areas in that matchup. Her last time out against Stephanie Page, she was a lot bigger, so we'll see how that plays into it in this one. So we'll move into our next fight, Matt.
VT loves the Boston Aquarium too. It's a cool spot.
VT loves that Boston Aquarium. Matt, Big Capper saying, y'all spending too much time on this woman MMA fight. Big Capper, you're the best, pal. Your show's great. I love it. Cody Durden's taking on Charles Johnson. I'm at Charles Johnson. He touched on it in an all-star MMA interview with JHK. He said that he had that broken right hand going into his last fight. I mean, he was supposed to fight back in January. He had all sorts of different issues. Now, whether it was the sinus infection, the fact that he had to go all the way across the world from Thailand over to the States, the right hand, just couldn't get it going against Ode Osborne. So he loses a split decision in that matchup. And now he comes into this one against somebody in Cody Durden, where there's a lot of similarities. Both guys can wrestle, both guys can strike, but if you look at a guy like Charles Johnson, it's flicking a lot at you from distance and getting out of the way, not trying to hang on for that receipt. The wrestling defense really isn't the greatest. The striking defense is something. He really does move out of the way very, very well. So kind of a tale of two fights when you watch a guy like Charles Johnson, but you know how good his cardio can be. Cody Durden, he's going to throw hammers. He's going to try and take you down. He's going to tire himself out by the end of the second round. We'll see how another training camp at ATT proper down in Florida plays out for a guy like Durden. For Charles Johnson, Murcielago MMA, training out of the States for this one, so the time change isn't such a big difference. But when you look at this one, I see JD saying bad blood at the face-off for this one. I think it is bad blood because obviously these two guys have had words out there on the Twitter sphere, and when it comes to a matchup like this, I think this is going to be a really fun fight.
It should be a really fun fight. I'm really excited for this one. To me, it comes down to, can Charles Johnson do enough in between some of those bigger takedown attempts from a guy like Durden? Because I do think Johnson on the outside is going to be elusive enough to avoid some of those bigger shots, because Durden, I would say, is the heavier hands out between these two, even though Johnson is the more technical guy with his boxing. He's more accurate. He does throw absurd numbers when he is able to really get into a rhythm, and I do think that's going to be key for him, because it's kind of like he has to expect some of those takedowns and some of those runs from a guy like Cody Durden, because he is going to get taken down and he's going to be on his back for some period of time throughout this fight. As someone who picked Charles Johnson at the start of the week, I can still admit that. I just think his volume and some of the damaging strikes he's going to be able to land on the in-betweens, and that third round, like you had mentioned, with some of the cardio that Charles Johnson and the output he does have, I think that can be enough to get it done. But this fight to me is a very close one, because I could see a war where Durden makes him uncomfortable against the cage, and if he's able to do that, he might think, or you might think, that he needs the wrestling a lot to open up his game. But if he just puts the threat in the back of Johnson's head that, hey, I can get taken down, it might be able to reduce Johnson's output enough to where Cody himself starts to have success in the feet.
JD gets it. Vin Diesel in the front, Party in the back. I still don't understand why Charles Johnson goes with just a salad, just a little slap of,
it's very Ronaldo.
Slap a caprese on the back. When you do look at this one, and we have a look at Fight Night Picks for the total votes over on our Instagram, 62% going with Charles Johnson. When I do look at this fight, Matt, for Cody Durden, we saw him out there his last time, and he did look pretty darn good. And both these guys want to start to string together some wins. And when you consider a matchup like this, I mean, with a guy like Durden, obviously he lost to Flick and he got finished. When you look, and there was bad blood in that one. When you look at Charles Johnson against Flick, he looked really, really good. So when you do consider it, MMA math isn't always equal. You talk about those Mota fights where Durden looked great in the Mota fight, as I just said. But Charles Johnson had to kind of rally through the initial storm and come out the other side like Andy Dufresne and get a big-time win. For me, I look at a guy like Cody Durden, improved cardio his last time out because he quit his full-time job and now he's training full-time out of ATT proper. I really like that for the wrestling, and I went back today and rewatched because I'm getting ready for Estevam versus Zhumagulov. So I watched Zhumagulov again against Charles Johnson, and you look at the takedowns that Zhumagulov's going for, powering his way through, running the pipe, going for the double leg, and Johnson's one of those guys that every time he posts up on his right arm and bounces up against the cage. We'll see if he's able to do that or if Durden's able to just handcuff it, pull it back in, and keep his takedown. So for me, I do like Cody Durden in the matchup, but as you said, I think it's a really close fight, and I think we've broken it down with every single angle.
And you're right, too. Both guys need to win this fight. Because they're both those, talented guys who haven't really been able to prove kind of their skill set to their talent level yet. It is a weird fight because only one of the two is really going to be able to break through. Because a loss for both these guys at this stage of their career, I don't want to say it's devastating, but it's going to be really difficult for them to climb their way back into the rankings. Because flyweight 5 years ago is not what flyweight is today. When Demetrius Johnson was at the top of the division beating everybody, it was not a great division. Let's just call it what it is. It's a really deep one now, and there's 15 great fighters who can all compete for the title at some point. So I really do think this is an important fight for the division.
Remember when DJ fought Wilson Hayes for a title?
At a Fox card, but it was a good card, honestly.
It was. Matt, our next fight, this one at heavyweight, unranked heavyweights. These guys at the start of the week, they were on the main card, and then they moved them to the prelims because unranked heavyweight fights go one of two ways.
Either the co-main event or not.
First round knockout or it goes way too uncomfortably long like Muhammad Usman did against Junior Tafa last week.
To be fair, I do think these guys have better cardio than Junior Tafa and Muhammad Usman did last week, just to give them their flowers, because don't worry, I'm going to take them away in a second. This is the weird thing about this fight, and I hate the fact that I am kind of relying on this for a heavyweight matchup, but we both said this a lot at the start of the week. Budai's going to have to really wear on Jay Collier in this fight, make him feel that physicality, especially in the clinch. I brought up a lot of Tyson Fury. He does it in boxing, and I know MMA you can wrestle, there's a lot more to it, but if he makes Jay Collier feel his weight and really wears him down, I could see that at least equalizing some of the output, because I think Collier is going to be the more active guy between the two on the outside. I still don't know what he's going to be able to do up close.
If the thinner fighter by half a pound puts more of his weight on the bigger guy.
Much bigger frame-wise,
when you do watch both of these guys, who's a better striker from space? Well, it's Jay Collier. Jay Collier with his leg kicks, and I went down through that at the start of the week. I mean, fighting guys like Vandera or Sherman, some of the things that Jay Collier is able to go out there and do, it can surprise you because he still moves relatively well on his feet. Being a guy that went from the RFA middleweight champ, beating Marcel Fortuna, going up to light heavyweight, now at heavyweight. So you look at a guy like Jay Collier, the volume's still there. He does tend to keep his head straight up, walk into some of the shots squared up. Now, he lands really good volume, but he's there for the receipt. You saw that in his fight against Jean Vellante, where he did get tagged a little bit. But a guy in Jay Collier against a guy like Martin Budai, the volume numbers, they definitely edge a guy like Collier. Collier's got a good first move to get off the cage as well, which is something that we've seen in certain fights. But when I do consider somebody like a Martin Budai, he puts his chest right in he puts his head right in your chest, and he tries to drive it through the cage. If Budai is at his best, Budai's going to try and break down the base, really try and go up top, down below, working his double legs. And I'm talking about college wrestling.
Budai, I have one question. Are you at your best?
I hope. I really do.
Okay.
Now, I see Clay saying maybe a point deduction resulting in a draw. Also, Collier would have better cardio if he hadn't eaten his nutrition. Clay is just going off today in the comments section. Maybe not really loving this one. We're talking about Jared Cannonier over there in the comments. Dan Goldstein saying Budai will win. I'll never unsee Huggy Bear Beast Boy Nurmagomedov's Jake. Yeah, that one was tough, but if you'll remember, and Dan definitely does, the first round, I don't know how Collier didn't get him out of there. And then in the second round, he was spent. If you look at Budai, even going back 3 fights, nothing happened until he was really able to get the win on Contender Series. When he fought Beast Boy, he was beating him soundly. Then he hit him in the back of the head, and instead of being a no contest or DQ, they went to a decision. And his last time out against Zverevsky, he looked bad. He looked really bad. He got outstruck at distance, which Jake Collier could do. That's why I say this fight is one of the big trap card type of fights that's on here. 77% of the fans have Budaj to get the win. I have Budaj because I like the pressure. But if Jake Collier wins, don't come back and Nelson Muntz me, because Jake Collier could go out there, do what Derevsky did, and build on it and get a win. I don't think it would surprise anybody.
I still Martin Budaj, though. You know? I just think, again, the clinch, the physicality is going to be a lot for Collier. Collier's going to have to use his footwork a lot in this fight. Just escape being in that position in the first place, because I do think it is going to be difficult for him to get his back off the cage. So for him, if he can avoid getting behind those two black lines, it's really going to be essential. But I still have Budaj.
The comments section about Mike Perry versus Luke Rockhold, I have no thoughts about it, but I'm sick and tired of seeing the ads for it. I don't like bare knuckle fighting at all.
I've seen a lot of promotion for it, though, to be fair.
Yeah, so maybe they'll do good numbers. Chad Mendez and Eddie Alvarez. You think there's going to be Eddie?
Probably.
There probably will. And for that reason, I'm not paying $39.99 US on Fight TV. Matt, the next matchup, Trey Waters taking on Josh Quinlan. Waters in on short notice. It was originally supposed to be Ange Lusa, who's much shorter, compact, and throws way better volume on the outside. And I think if Lusa took on Quinlan, I probably would have picked Ange Lusa.
That's a tough fight to predict, honestly.
It really
is.
is.
This one to be like, that's the thing. Trey Waters is super explosive on the outside now and can meet a lot of Josh Quinlan's firepower with his own firepower. And that's why I really do think there's a chance this could turn into one of those like Vicente Luque versus Brian Barberena type fights. Like it could be a knock him down, drag him out type of matchup, because both guys are willing to kind of wait on the outside for their perfect shot. And it's not going to be as easy as whoever lands the first clean shot is going to win. But both guys do possess enough power to kind of get it done at any point throughout the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, when you do consider it out of both of these guys, and the super chat there from Louis-Pierre Dion saying, let's get into it. Merci, Louis-Pierre. Yeah, but you do consider this fight, Matt. We're coming out of one Fight Team MMA for Josh Quinlan. I mean, I feel like they probably just feed them raw steaks and Monster, and that's it. Raw steaks and Monster. Josh Quinlan, second fight in the UFC. Now, his first time out, he knocked out Jason Witt quickly. Obviously, we touched on it before that fight. We touched on it before this fight. The takedown defense is a little bit chintzy for a guy like Josh Quinlan. And for Quinlan, his last fight with the LFA, where Chiesa was like, this guy's rigid. But it works for him because he can harness a lot of that power that he has, and he throws a lot into his leg kicks. He throws a lot into his big hooks. He'll go right hook to the body, left hook up top, which is a combination that it's usually more left hook to the body, right hook up top from a guy fighting from the orthodox stance. But when you look at a guy like Trey Waters, he's really interesting because I know there was some comments earlier about Charles Johnson and Bobby Green, a lot of the slipping, the moving on the outside. Trey Waters is one of those guys that also doesn't have a lot of hair in his head and also keeps his hands very, very low, and he tends to kind of like lean back and roll with a lot of the punches. His takedown defense is good. From what I've seen, his jiu-jitsu is quite good, and it plays into a lot of his wins. But when you look at a guy like Trey Waters, Nick Rodriguez saying Trey's not 6'5", he's like 6'3". I don't have a measuring tape.
He's very big.
In the LFA, they said he was 6'4". On Contender Series, they said he was 6'5". So I don't know how tall he is, but I'm just going with the numbers that they provide us. When I look at a fight like this, though, it's can Trey Waters pull him into the deep waters and win this one as it goes late, or is Josh Quinlan going to go out there and starch him early?
But here's the only thing that I disagree with that, and I agree with everything you said. I think Waters could also end this early. Like, I don't think he has to get it into, like, the late second, early third round for him to really be able to capitalize on a finish. Because, like you said, Quinlan's not a guy who's going to flow a lot with his striking. And the way that Waters strikes, for instance, like, Robert Whittaker would be a just stylistic nightmare, right? He's going to flash the hands, make you move, and then when you pick a side, he'll throw it a head kick. Quinlan is going to show you some of his more explosive movements from the outside, and he will leave an opening there if you are able to crack him down the middle with a big shot. So I think the opportunity is there for Waters, but I just don't know if he's going to have enough volume to really keep Josh Quinlan off him, because I think that's really going to be key. If he throws a lot, it's going to keep Quinlan at such a range to where, okay, Waters can start to pick him off. So ever so slightly, I think Quinlan's going to be able to use his feet, be able to jump into range at the right opportunities. But this could be a weird fight. I know I said a lot at the start, and I was hyping myself up. This could be fight of the night. I guess there is an alternate reality to this where both guys are a little bit hestant from the outside because they just realize how dangerous their opponent is.
I do have Josh Quinlan in the matchup. I think he's going to catch him with one of those hooks. But again, when you're trying to calibrate yourself against 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", whatever the heck it is, versus a guy who's 5'10". It is a much different change, and that fight was reintroduced. This one was made last Saturday night, so a week to get ready for a matchup against a completely different opponent for Quinlan, and likewise for Water, coming off of fighting. Water's just fought a couple of weeks ago and won the LFA title, so it just happened. And even in that one, it was, what was it? It was a left hand from his opponent. It was his right that came over top, and he dropped him, even though he's losing on the numbers, was Waters in that fight. So big win there. And then we move into the main card. Unranked heavyweights again. Marco Sergio de Lima taking on Salsa Boy, Waldo Cortez Acosta. And Matt, I mean, when you look at a guy like Waldo Cortez Acosta, 6-4 in the boxing career, 3 wins by knockout, 4 losses by knockout. But obviously, the boxing is what's got him to the dance in MMA, and it's the reason why he's 9-0.
Remember Tyron Woodley won a UFC title and also got knocked out by Jake Paul in boxing? The skills don't always translate, is all I'm trying to say. But, like you were saying, Cortez Acosta is very much a boxer kind of in MMA, and that is at the forefront of his skill set. And again, I know I've talked about ranges in a lot of these matchups, but this fight, again, is really going to come down to range, because if de Lima can stand on the outside and blast some of those huge explosive kicks that we know he's really good at, then I don't know what Acosta is going to be able to do on the outside other than try to flurry at it, because sometimes you can have success if you're fighting a heavy leg kick, or if you're not a big wrestler, flurry them and try to close that distance, just so they don't have the space to throw those kicks. Now, is closing the distance on a guy like de Lima automatically going to be a successful game plan? No, not at all. Even at this age, he still has incredible power. Even though he was a former, I'm going to call him a 210er, because he wasn't really a consistent 205er by any means. He still does have that one-punch knockout power in the heavyweight division, and that's why I think this is a very difficult fight for Cortez Acosta, but I still think his volume, and I still think some of the work on the inside that he'll be able to do throughout this matchup will be enough. But if de Lima lands one of those huge shots, like if you can knock out Ben Rothwell, you can probably knock out a horse. Yeah, you could probably knock out an elephant. You can probably knock out Cortez Acosta.
Ben Rothwell hadn't been knocked out since he fought Cain Velasquez years and years and years before, and de Lima just ran across the cage and knocked him out like it was nothing. Yeah, took money out of his kids' mouths with that one. And when you look at a guy like de Lima, I know I touched on this at the start of the week, 9-6 in the UFC. 5 of the the 6 losses are by submission. 7 of the 9 wins by finish, and all of those 7 in the first round. And they've never given Marco Sergio de Lima a bonus. And that just, he's got to be going out there
a few times,
for the bonuses. Rothwell is on the BKFC card. I like Ben Rothwell, but I'm not
It really sounds like this card is marketed towards you now that we're getting more into it.
They decided they try and market it my way, but I'm not picking up what they're putting down. For $40 US. $40 US. That's a lot of money. When I look at this fight, Matt, the fans at Fight Night pick 60% of them going with Waldo Cortez Acosta. I think Sergio de Lima beats him in this matchup. I think, again, when you look at a guy in de Lima that you said, a 210 star, but he's settled in at 262.5. He's the heavier fighter in this one, and I think he can really wear on Waldo Cortez Acosta. If you look at a guy like de Lima, and you look at the fight that Cortez Acosta had in his final LFA fight against Peterson, Peterson was able to wear on him, weigh on him, and then finally when Peterson got up, he got finished.
Cortez Acosta, though, de Lima doesn't have great cardio, though, himself. So I just think even if he leans on him,
he showed even better abilities his last time out against Ivanov.
Because heavyweights at 37 normally gain a lot of skills. My point is, he's not really a cardio king himself, so even if he is able to do that, I just don't know if his volume numbers are really going to be able to outweigh it.
Rando, you complaining about BKFC for $40 makes you seem like a casual. Rando, if you're paying $40 to watch guys with no gloves punch each other, have at it, bud. Matt, Julian Erosa is taking on Fernando Padilla. And Matt, if you do consider it, Padilla, long layoff, now he's already 26, he debuted at 18. Fernando Padilla reminds me of a guy that I mentioned earlier on that's on this, or on next weekend's card, that's fighting Zhalga Shumagulov and Rafael Esteban, because both guys started at 18, both guys had long layoffs through their careers, and both guys have really progressed from when they were 18 to where they are now. I'm a Wayne Kerr with the super chat. Let's go Fernando. He's an awesome dude. It has amazing skills. I think he finishes Erosa. I also talked to him about FNP. Uh-oh, that could be bad.
That's cool, though.
Did you tell him that I had him? That's kind of tough. When you consider this one, Matt, and when you look at these fights, I mean, Fernando Padilla and Julian Erosa's been around the block. He came back into the UFC, and he put on a great win streak. He's dropped a couple here and there. He dropped his last one where he was favored to beat a, recently as of that week, top 15 fighter in Caceres. So if you do consider it, it's an interesting, tricky fight for a guy like Erosa who tends to march forward with his hands down and throw those odd angle heavy shots forward.
I don't know it is an awkward fight for him, though, because, like, Julian Erosa is going to be Julian Erosa no matter who is standing across from him. So I still think his game plan is going to be the same no matter what. And I'm going Kerr, I agree with exactly what you say. Like, could Padilla go out there and finish him early? Of course he could. Julian Erosa is a guy who, I've said, it's kind of weird how his durability works. If he's able to settle himself into a fight, then he can need some pretty big shots in that second and third round. But we have seen, if you catch him cold early on in a fight and he's not really able to settle in, it's kind of like Andrei Arlovski. You know, like Andrei Arlovski, for the longest time, people said, hey, he doesn't have a great chin, but a lot of those finishes come early. He is a heavyweight too, so anybody has knockout power. My point is, I could see Erosa losing this fight in the first round, and if you want to come at me if he does that, that is fine. All I'm saying is, for Padilla, I think this is a very difficult matchup for him to have in his UFC debut. I just think there's something to be said for fighting a guy who has a lot of experience, who's been there, who's done that, and who you can rely on not to just fight a consistent 15 minutes, but a hard 15 minutes, and really be strong in that third round. So if Fernando goes out there and impresses, I will be the first one to admit that I'm wrong. I just think Julian Erosa is a really difficult matchup for your UFC debut.
Well, if you have a look at Fight Night Picks, 71% of the fans going with Juicy J, and I see there from Clay, I had the thought, no way Caceres beats Erosa, and Caceres was able to definitely go out there and get the win. Dan saying Erosa's chin makes him a bad favorite. Groggy Poppers, Bruins win Game 7, right, Craig? I hope they lose. I hope they lose. I hope the Panthers go on to beat them, and I hope the Tampa Bay Lightning are able to go out there.
How many touchdowns are they going to get, Craig?
They're going to get 17 touchdowns. I hope the Lightning go out there and beat the Leafs too, because why not? Just drag them all down. I mean, the Habs are going to get Connor Bedard, and they're going to go off like a rocket ship. But when you do consider a matchup like this, I'm Wayne Kerr saying Padilla has solid power from personal experience. He's also sneaky AF. For me, going back and rewatching the Padilla fights, and I went down through and I mentioned them earlier on, he's lost a good competition. I mean, Danny Gay was one of the fighters. He was able to go out there and beat Derek Minner off of Minner's takedown attempts. He was able to then submit him off of his back. But when you do consider it for somebody like Padilla, he does have a good variety of offense if he's walking down his opponents, and he can capitalize on some of their mistakes. I thought about it at the start of the week, and I'm still going to go with it right now. With Julian Erosa, I think volume is going to be the key, and you could see some of those fight week jitters for a guy like Padilla. I know it was mentioned there in the chat as well. I'm going to switch the pick, and I'm going to go with Julian Erosa in the matchup. So both of us with Juicy J in the fight at 145, but I think this is going to be a big-time fight, and I think this is going to be the one that gets the 20 fans in attendance on their feet.
Oh yeah, this should be an incredible fight. I'm glad you joined my side. Just like, think about any top prospect in any sport. Like, Anthony Volpe is one of the top prospects in baseball. Even he had some growing pains and is still going through them right now. And like, I hate to say this about MMA, but baseball has like a lot more in-depth scouting process than MMA does. So like, it does take a little bit of time to get your feet under you at the highest level. But if Padilla goes out there and wins, like beating a guy like Julian Erosa in your UFC debut only sets you up for a great path moving forward.
Rando, your reasoning doesn't work when you look at one championship. Just keep sinking money into it and giving the fans the fights for free. Matt, Cody Brundage taking on Rodolfo Vieira. And out of all of the fights on this card, I mean, I can make a case this way, I can make a case that way, but when I look at this matchup, I know how lights out the jiu-jitsu can be for Rodolfo Vieira. I've seen slightly improved gas tank in some of these fights, but definitely not his last time out. 0 of 20 on the takedown attempts. And he got outstruck from distance against Chris Curtis. Well, Cody Brundage is a good wrestler, and Cody Brundage has gotten even better with his boxing as his fights has gone on. If you look at it for a guy like Brundage, it's mixing his martial arts that have caused him issues. Like, you look at the fight that, Sean Woodson had on Contender Series, where it was Terrence McKinney in that one. And it was like, okay, McKinney's got to kind of bring part and parcel together, and now he's just kind of cutting a little bit wilder in some of his fights, but he's cleaned some things up as well. Cody Brundage is cut from the same cloth. You look at the fight against William Knight, he's having a ton of success, they get back up, and boom goes the dynamite. So when you look at a guy like Cody Brundage, I give him definitely, like, he's better on the feet, his boxing's cleaner, he can throw better output as the 3 rounds go on. It's just, does he not get submitted? That's the big question.
I think this is the big difference between Brundage and Chris Curtis, because he brought that comparison up a lot, and this is where I think they differ completely. Chris Curtis is going to box and then wrestle. Brundage is going to box so he can wrestle. And I think that's the big difference between these two. Brundage, to have success in a lot of these matchups, is going to initiate a lot more of these takedown attempts. Whereas Chris Curtis, we have seen in a lot of fights, be happy to not shoot for a lot of offensive takedowns and use his wrestling much more as a defensive component to his game, instead of going out there and really searching for a lot. Now, if Cody Brundage does use his striking, I agree with you. I think the volume heavily favors him. I think he is just the more complete striker, the more complete striking package on the feet. I just worry that at some point he is going to shoot for a takedown and try to initiate some of the grappling. And if he does do that, Vieira's not the guy you want to do that with all for any second of time at any point. So I do think Brundage has all of the skills to go out there and win this fight. I just don't know if he's really going to be able to stick to his striking for a consistent 15.
Why do you think he's going to shoot on Rodolfo Vieira?
I just think the pressure being in, like, we see people shoot on Damian Maia. We saw Neil Magny do it. Like, guys make poor decisions in the cage all the time.
Matt, if Cody Brundage shoots on Rodolfo Vieira, I'll have a mohawk in next week's video. How about that?
Craig, I don't care what you do. This isn't for you. I'm talking to those people right now. Like, if people want to disagree with me, that is fine. I still think Brundage is the better fighter on the feet, and I think he could win this fight by decision. I just think at some point, if they are grappling, that's when it's going to heavily favor Vieira, and that's when he can get the win.
67% of the fans have Vieira to get the win, and I think Vieira can initiate his own takedowns out of it. But if I'm going to do a mohawk, if Brundage doesn't shoot, like if Brundage shoots, what are you going to do? What's the comeback on that one?
Craig, I don't care.
I think that's got to be the worst take I've ever heard. Like, I think Vieira wins
Craig,
this
we
fight.
both have bad takes all the time.
I think it's a terrible take. I think it's awful. I don't see Brundage wrestling whatsoever. Now, who I do see wrestling is Caio Borralho against a guy like Michael Olszewczuk. But for Olszewczuk, another weight cut at middleweight, and I thought he looked really good on the scale. So good for Lord Michael. We know he's got some crazy, crazy power that he possesses in his hands. He'll go down to the body, switch back up to the head, and he lands with reckless intent. But his takedown defense is a little bit of an issue. Now, Brundage went for 1 takedown, 2 takedown, 3 takedown, and on the third one, Michael was able to reverse it, get on top, and land ground and pound and finish him. But when you look at a matchup like this, I mean, Michael Olszewczuk against Borralho, if Borralho decides to do what he did against Mahmoud Muradov, who's a great boxer, then he could have some success, like he did with that long karate stance on the outside. But if you look at it for a guy like Borralho, as that fight went on, initiating more of his wrestling, we saw it on Contender Series. We've seen it in the UFC against whether it's Aaron Jeffrey or anybody so far. He's had that great opportunity. So when you look at this one, I know Borralho is a big favorite. I'm sure the fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram have Borralho to get the win, but it's not the easiest fight.
And it's a dangerous one. I agree 100% with what you said. I thought Michael looked pretty good on the scales going down to 185 pounds. It's always weird because, like, he's not a physical specimen. He's got a very weird build to him, but at 185, I do think he does look quite well. It's going to be an interesting fight, though, because if Borralho tries to stay on the outside and kind of play that game with a guy like Olszewczuk, that's when he's going to crash the distance and use some of those jabs to the body and whatnot, because that's the weird thing. I'm very surprised to see where the odds are.
Yeah, here, I'll pull it up. You can't really see it, but 91% at Fight Night Picks have Borralho to get the win.
I'm surprised to see them so one-sided, just because Olszewczuk does seem to be one of those like weird fan favorites, just because he does go out there and have a lot of exciting fights. But what does he possess that always gives him a chance in every single fight? He has legit one-punch knockout power. Like, it can be to the body, it can be weird ground and pound, it can come from weird angles. I just think for Olszewczuk, he has enough awkward parts in his game to have success. I just worry about his abilities to get back up to his feet. And that's been a kind of a problem for him, especially earlier on in his UFC career. He is good at getting back up kind of initially. He is a very good athlete at jumping back to his feet. But if you are able to secure that control on him, he does become a bit of a stationary grappler we have seen. And if Borralho is able to get on top of him, loosen him up with some of that good ground and pound like we've seen, I could see him being able to secure a submission.
For all the people that care how tall these fighters are, use the stats that are provided. I promise you, if I go to the fights, I'll bring a measuring tape from home and I'll measure them. Excuse me, Mr. Borralho, can I see how tall you are in inches and centimeters for the graphic? But when you consider a matchup like this, I mean, for Olszewczuk, he's been knocked down, but he gets up again, and you've seen it in some of these matchups. So again, 91% of the fans have Borralho to get the win. We'll see how long Borralho goes from I'm Lyoto Machida of striking, somebody to train with Trey Waters for this fight, to I'm going to implement some of this grappling, and I'm going to hold position. Because Borralho, if there's anything that he does well, and I saw it mentioned there by JD, I think people are getting Caio and Jailton Almeida confused. Jailton Almeida calls himself the Habib
much
of
heavier
MMA. Well, he's much heavier, but he calls himself the Habib of light heavyweight and heavyweight. But he goes in there and spears guys like it's Edge in 2008.
When I say heavier, I don't mean weight. I just mean the way he's on top of guys.
He goes in there, goes for the double leg, wraps the legs, waits for you to spin around, then he goes for the submission. Caio gets you down, will reverse position, holds on, he stays heavy, and he just waits and waits and waits for his opportunity. So Caio is not as fun as Jailton to watch, and I know Caio lost to Jailton in a grappling match here a few years ago, but Caio's definitely a good fighter, and for me, I will go with him here. But Undercover MVP saying Michael's got hands, but he's a doughboy, and he's going to get grappled to death. He's not a doughboy at 185, man. He looks pretty darn good. Then we move into our main event of the evening, and Matt, we have Ricky Simón taking on Sung Yadong, and this could be like one of those all-time classics at bantamweight where people are sleeping on it because it's a couple of guys, number 8 and number 10, going at it, 8 being Sung Yadong, 10 being Ricky Simón. And Ricky Simón, I don't know if I mentioned it, but, you know, you see these fighters that they take a couple of losses in a row and then it's, well, this guy's done. But Ricky Simón, like, he fought a returning Uriah Faber, got starched. Well, that's bad. Then he fought Rob Font, couldn't get past the jab and work in his wrestling. Well, that's not good. And then he had to really build himself up through the unranked again to then beating Jack Shore and taking that. Oh, and Jack Shore, undefeated amateur, undefeated pro. The guy was on to stardom, former Cage Warriors champ. And then it's a lot like the Asuncao win. You look at the things that Ricky Simón's been able to do. His boxing continues to get better as he goes along, training and cross-training with different gyms, as well as his own American Top Team Portland. But obviously the wrestling's going to be the difference in this fight if he's able to activate it and get it going. Because you've seen Sung Yadong struggle in certain respects. I know that Bharat Kandari win where he defends the takedown and then he ends up getting the finish. That's quite a while ago, but if it's just standing, I mean, Sung Yadong can do it with the best of them in this division.
Oh, if it's just standing, Sung Yadong wins this by TKO. Sung Yadong is a far superior striker than Ricky Simón at this stage of his career, even though Simón is getting better. It's just the variety of strikes that Sung can throw, the way that he can switch his stances in the middle of a combination. Ricky Simón is not caught up to that level of striking just yet, and let's be honest, I don't know if he ever will, just because Ricky Simón is much more of a wrestler and a grappler in his career. The one thing about Sung Yadong that I don't love, though, is even when he wins fights, it doesn't matter what the result is, he can get held down for periods. And we did see that even against Corey Sandhagen. On the feet, Sung was having quite a bit of success. He was even landing his own really good shots. But when was Corey really able to kind of take over and have his own success? Sung was able to defend some of those earlier takedown attempts, but as that fight continued, and as Sung started to slow down a little bit, and that's the thing I want to mention, I don't think the extra 2 rounds will overly negatively affect either guy. I do think, and we had talked about this a little bit more when we re-broke this fight down for a 5-round atmosphere, it might even favor Sung a little bit more just because it gives him 10 more minutes to damage Simón. And if it's not a huge deal for either guys, it being cardio, then maybe Sung Yadong could go out there, defend enough takedowns, and really be able to damage Ricky Simón and put on a great performance. I just think the takedowns that Ricky Simón gets are going to be able to afford him a lot of time in that top position, and I think that's going to help him avoid the damage.
Going with Eldar's comment, Ricky is better than Corey. Do you agree with that?
I don't know. He's a better wrestler than Corey. Like, they're not in the same stage of the rankings, really. Like, the way I break up every single ranking is, and they don't always break up in the same way, but you've got the champion, and then you've got, like, the 3 guys who could all fight for the belt in their next fight, and then you've got a bunch of really good contenders trying to get into that pool. Corey Sandhagen is in that top 3 right now trying to get a title shot, whereas Ricky Simón, if he wins this, he's probably going to need another win, you'd say, maybe, and then he can get into that top 3.
You're ranked 10th. He's got to get 2 or 3 wins before he even fights for the title. Like, he's got
to
really
no. Well, of course,
together.
For the title. I just mean to get into that conversation of, oh, he's only 1 fight away for the title. I think if he wins this, it would probably take another one for him to get into that category.
It really is tough. And I mean, when you do consider this and you look at a guy like Ricky Simón continuing to get better, for Sung Yadong shoring up some of those defensive liabilities, he was already a good striker coming into the UFC and training at Team Alpha Male. We already broke it down, kind of the science of, well, you train with Uriah Faber. What worked for Faber? For Ricky Simón, he trains with Vince Morales. It's his cousin who's fought Sung Yadong and lost to him. Vince Morales fighting with XMMA. XMMA, your favorite promotion.
I can't say it is.
I love it. But when you do consider this one, for me, I do like Sung Yadong with some of those striking advantages that he does have. So if we have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes on this one, I'm surprised. 58% going with Ricky Simón. It seemed like it was that way before it became a 5-round fight. It seemed like, you know, a lot of people were on with Sung Yadong. Now 53% here in the YouTube community tab going with Ricky Simón. Corey, or rather, I want to go up there for a second. Cody hitting up the super chat for the Mohawk cut. We'll see if that happens. So you're laying nothing on the line. I'm laying my hair on the line. You've got
Craig,
nothing.
no. When you say you lay your hair on the line, you're just going to put it up like this. That's not putting it on. You're not cutting it. You're not doing anything.
No, I'm just going to put on for the fans. I'm going to put on for the fans, and you're going to do nothing for them.
Craig, my whole point is Cody Brundage isn't some IQ pro in like MMA. I don't think about him as the Chris Paul of the UFC. I don't think he's going to fight a perfect 15 minutes. By any stretch.
I don't think he's going to go for a takedown. Matt, as we always do with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, we go back down through the card. 400 tuning in so far.
Yeah, that's not a mohawk. See, if you just gel it.
Yeah, but the way that my hair is cut around the sides, they can't really see it. It sets up for a mohawk, and my hair is really long.
Oh, so it sets up for it. You've been getting ready for this.
Matt, when you do look at this one, Hailey Cowan taking on Jamey-Lyn Horth. I'm going to go with Cowan ever so slightly, but I don't like the weight miss.
I could definitely see Cowan win this fight. I just think Horth is going to land 2 or 3 more significant strikes per round. I think that'll be enough to give her the edge.
Marty Bender wondered about the questionable decisions. Oh, they seem to be every single weekend, and I don't know if they're on the rise, but it's crazy. Journey Newson taking on Marcus McGhee. I'm going with the newcomer who signed the paper on Wednesday night to make his debut.
I got Journey Newson. I'll braid my hair. Sure, I'm a winker. I'll do that. That's definitely long enough.
We're going to be taping in the morning. Mohawk. All right, fair enough.
Okay.
All right, Edgar taking on Alekseeva. I'm going to go with Edgar.
I have Edgar as well.
All right, then we have Durden versus Johnson. I'm going Durden.
I have Johnson.
All right, then we have, whoops, I made a mistake. We have Budai taking on Collier. I'm going Budai, but there's not a lot of confidence there.
I've also got Budai in this one.
All right. Then we have Quinlan versus Waters. I'm going with Quinlan.
Also got Quinlan, but that's a very volatile fight.
Cortez Acosta versus DeLima. I've got DeLima.
I've got Cortez Acosta.
All right. Then we have a look at Erosa versus Padilla. I'm switching the pick and going with Erosa.
Julian Erosa. I just think it's a very difficult fighter to have your debut against.
Brundage taking on Vieira. I'm going to go with Vieira, but it's with low confidence.
I've also got Hidalgo in the match.
And he's a big favorite for what the fight is. All right. Bohalio taking on Oleszejczuk. I'm going to go with Bohalio.
I've also got Bohalio.
And then if we have a look at the main event, Song Yadong taking on Ricky Simone. Matt, for the marbles at 135 pounds, and it's a 5-rounder now. I'm going to go with Song Yadong in the matchup.
And I've got Ricky Simone.
And you know what I will say about this one? You know, I work really hard on the posters and this and that. The UFC did a really good job with the Song Yadong Ricky Simone one. And then if I bring it up right here and I turn down the music on the promo video, UFC 288, that's the one that's coming up next weekend. Aljamain Sterling taking on Henry Cejudo. In the co-main event, a short turn for one Gilbert Burns. It feels like he fought last weekend. He's going to be taking on Bilal Muhammad, and that is a top tier matchup. So I think that one's going to be really fun. And overall, if you break down the card, it's kind of a weaker card, actually. It's kind of a weaker pay-per-view card. You do have plenty of ranked competition, but a lot of debuts on that one, a lot of Contender Series fighters, and a lot of fighters that are coming off of losses as well. So stuff to get excited for, but stuff to kind of really go through the weeds, I guess, with that one too.
It's going to be a fun one to break down, though. The main event reminds me a lot of if George St. Pierre came back after beating Michael Bisping to fight Robert Whittaker. And that's kind of a weird kind of fight to bring up, but Cejudo famously became double champ, left the belt, but to his credit, he is coming back to kind of fight the next generation of 135ers, and like we've both been talking about for a while now, 135 really is the division to be at, so if Cejudo's able to get the win over Aljamain Sterling and kind of reclaim this title, I'm not really sure where it puts him in the overall hierarchy of all-time greats, but he's going to be right there with some of the best fighters to ever do it.
Lord Fig, is Cejudo still the same? I'll tell you what, he's definitely lended his knowledge and his training abilities to a lot of fighters that have leveled up with him. So a big move there. Marcus Mustard, fight fans, let's get into it. That's a good way to leave it there, Marcus. For everybody that left a like, you can do that on the way out. For everybody that hit the super chat, we certainly thank you. A big day of fights today. 288 on the way. You're not going to want to miss it. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.